Hello, welcome to the DoujinCast podcast. Name still pending. Episode 1. This podcast, we're going to be reviewing Touhou Doujinshi, and I have some members from the Touhou Project Discord. We'll introduce ourselves.
Hello, I'm ReUKing. A little about myself. Guy in the army. I just like Touhou Project. How about you?
Nice.
Short and sweet. Good way to put it. All right, so I'm iampotato. You can just call me Sam, though, or whatever the fuck you want to call me. I'm a software engineer, and I also like Touhou, and I'm here to talk about all the shit I read. I actually read a decent amount of Doujinshi. I haven't been reading as much recently, but it's something I enjoy doing, and I've always enjoyed doing, so hoping to share the fun stuff around.
All right, and I am PyroMartian. I'm just here chilling in the DC area. I'm a business major, but I'm actually hoping to get into actually a CS related job soon. So that's what I'm working on, but I really enjoy Touhou and I enjoy Doujinshi. So hopefully we'll go in and actually review some, which is what this podcast is about. Yeah, so we're going to be reviewing all of these derivative works from the Touhou project, which we'll give brief preview.
So, Touhou Project, in the simplest terms, is a bullet hell video game series created by Zune. It's fairly popular enough, and it's so popular, in fact, that it gets all these Doujin music remixes. It's wonderful. And the games themselves are nothing to scoff at, too. It is great.
It's a fun series with a lot of really interesting, little bits of character and lore. So there's a lot of fun stuff for whatever you want to, whatever part of it happens to be your thing.
Oh, definitely. The games are enjoyable, and then anything else, all these other derivative works are
Don't get me started on the music. I can listen to music for days. I do listen to music for days. Great.
That's what I listen to when I drive, so yeah. Music's great.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. I have an hour commute to work, and it's always, usually Touhou arrangements.
The only issue is... my coworkers don't like my music. They're into the rap and country, so it doesn't always click with them. It never clicks with them. But I still love this series to the very being of my soul. Though people often shit talk my favorite character, Flandra Scarlet, I don't care. I really love her for what she is. I feel I can relate to her. And I don't know, her design, her character, I just love it. I just really wish more people did something with her.
Okay.
I mean, I talked about my favorite character. What about you two?
Personally, I'm very much into Marisa Kirasame, and the reason for that is actually really interesting. She's kind of the most relatable character to me. I'm really into the interpretation of her as the hard-working person who is just a regular human who had to who wanted to contend with all this crazy, ridiculous, magical bullshit. So she's like, hey, I'm gonna study magic. I'm gonna become a witch, and I'm gonna be the other protagonist. Fuck you, Reimu, and all your natural talent. I'm gonna do the same shit by through hard work and studiousness and all that. And I love those kinds of characters. So that's why she's my girl.
That's not how it works in PC 98.
Well, it's a good thing I've never played PC 98.
Yeah.
PC 98 is gone. It's in the past.
Whatever. Before we dwell deeper, Pyro, your favorite?
Oh, my favorite. It's no secret to anybody who knows me, but it's Kasen Ibaraki. So who Kasen is she's a supposed hermit, and I use these air quotes, hermit. And so one day she shows up at the Hakurei Shrine, and she sticks her nose into Reimu's business. She's generally very helpful to her, and make sure that the shrine's going on. While Reimu's doing her crazy schemes. But what's interesting about Kasen is it's not really too much of a spoiler, but she's not actually a hermit, but she's an Oni. And her backstory is that she was fighting with some humans and her arm got cut off, right? And the point in Touhou, and this is expanded in the official works, Wildenhorn Hermit, is that she's looking for her arm, and she has this like magical smoke arm that she keeps bandaged up, and so people just think it's a regular arm. She's trying to use the Hakure Shrine as like this like hub where she could just go out and find her arm, because she has the feeling that it's out there somewhere, right? And so she's going doing that. But while she's doing that, in the meanwhile, she's going and helping Reimu.
Helping is not something Reimu would say, but
right. Everybody says that she's super naggy. She likes to lecture people a lot on what they should and
I
shouldn't
like to
do.
think that she's the voice of reason in some crazy situations.
I would shit talk her more, but that revolves around another topic we will eventually come to.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
You know what I'm talking about.
That day, when that day comes. But
I expect a good one from you, Pyro. I expect a good one.
All right, I'll keep that in mind. I'll put that down in my notes. I'll give you a good one. But Kassen is the topic right now because my doujin revolves around her backstory. She's introduced in Waldenhorn Hermit, but she's already there. She says that, she's met Reimu before, she just forgot, and other characters know who she is, more or less. Character development starts from, like, that point. She already lost her arm. She's already a hermit that has, like, actual hermit powers, despite being an Oni.
Well,
but, yeah, because she has her mansion, her dojo hidden in Senkai, using hermit arts. And so she actually, kind of did become a hermit in a sense. Her backstory isn't really expounded on. That's where my Doujinshi comes into play. So this one's by Uuzan.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called Stitching into Ibarakasen. I love things like this. I love a lot of other doujins. Whenever they do something, they have like this preconceived notion of these characters, and they're like, okay, let's take them off this route, and we're gonna have them do something crazy that they just wouldn't do otherwise inside the actual like canon of Touhou. And what I really like about this one is that it's very plausible. Like you could plot this in, and it would fit.
Uh-huh.
I mean, there's probably a few like if you're like Touhou lore-wise, it's slightly off, but its setting in general, Pyro,
yeah,
right. You can just plop it down and it makes sense.
Yeah, it's a nice little prequel story.
It's a nice
something else to notice. Sorry to interrupt, but you obviously her name. It's based off the actual Oni.
Ibaraki Doji, yeah.
Yeah. So if you know a little about that Oni already, because you're a huge weed or something, right? you would have like kind of this sense of like, oh, I already know this character. There's this like set background, and this doujin actually fits it in pretty well. I enjoy it.
So this doujin starts off like during a battle, right? This village is fighting Onis, and they've actually managed to corner Kassen, and they managed to cut off one of her arms, which is quite a feat for, actually hurting an Oni is like virtually impossible. And these humans managed to do this. And so now Kassen needs to escape. She kills a few people in the process. And she's like kind of remembering like what happened before, where Suika gave her like a new life because she was dying as a child. And Suika said, hey, tell me your real name, and I can make you into an Oni, and you'll live. And so that point is important for later on.
I don't know. I feel like he takes a lot of liberty in the assumption, like, hey, let's say Suika is like the elder Oni and the one who creates Kassen, because considering Kassen is said to be like one of the four sages of Gensokyo, and she's got this kind of like mysterious but very ancient past. Like he's taking a really interesting it's a really interesting setup to say like, hey, Suika is the kind of the one who gives her the Oni power. It kind of puts Kassen into this like lesser role.
Well, you also have to consider something that if you're taking the original myth of Ibaraki, she is a subordinate to another Oni, one of the four heavenly divas of the mountain or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And if you want to assume Suika's based off that other Oni, this works perfectly fine. Like, because Suika herself is like like one of the top Onis, just naturally. Like, it's already established that's the case. So, Kasen being underneath her, especially in this lore, is perfectly fine if you take in the other like account of like the actual myth she's based on, which is fine in this case.
Yeah.
So so it does really match up with what the historical context is. Well, Suka saves her life, right? And so Kasen's still running around and she's still badly hurt. So she stumbles onto this village, and as much as she wants to pillage and loot it, she needs to lay low for a little bit. And she stumbles across this old lady. Instead of outright killing her, the old lady runs up to her, hugs her, and says, "Hey, daughter, where have you been?" And Kasen's shocked, but she quickly realizes that she could use this to her advantage. She could stay at this old lady's house, recuperate, right, and like do whatever she wants later on, right? So she decides to pretend that she's actually this person's daughter, and so the relationship is kind of interesting. So she notices something that the old lady says, like, "Yeah, you should actually call me by my name instead of hag." And she's like, "Oh, I could use this. You old hag, get over here." And she's like, "It works." So the rest of the Doujin's kind of spent like them like living together, and Kasen calling her a hag and stuff, and they're having dinner and everything, and she starts getting attached to her. Kasen realizes that she can't stay there forever. She needs to go. She decides to leave whenever the old lady's not there. Runs into her again outside, and the old lady's about to get killed by this one dude. And before she could do anything to intervene and help, the guy that's about to attack the old lady pushes her off like this building, and this old lady's about to die. She hit the ground pretty hard, and she's about to die. And Kasen realizes that she really cares for her and tries to get her to tell her her real name, because she never mentioned her name once. And if she knows her real name, she could turn her into an Oni like Suika did to her. And the old lady says, "Hey, I because she thinks she's talking to like another person. She's like, I deceived someone. I deceived a stranger and said she was my daughter." And Kasen gets really emotional about it, and she's trying to save her life. They realize that it's implied that they actually are daughter and mother. So she actually accidentally ran into her old mother, and she's still trying to get her to say her name, like even more now, right? Because it's her mom. But she wants her to hear her say it, and Kasen understands and says, "Hey, I'm sorry, Mom." He finally calls her mom, and then she dies. I guess like after this, Kasen becomes like she cleans up her act. She becomes like a better person, I guess. And she decides to become a hermit. And so the last panel is really nice, where she bumps into Marissa, and it's like this like accurate reproduction of the first episode of WoW, of the first chapter of WoW, where they bump into each other, and she's like, "What are you doing? Why are you not paying attention?" It's like, "Oh, I'm remembering everything that I did when I came into this world." So it fits in like perfectly. It's like the last panel is like the first page of the WoW comic.
Yeah, so it's very nice, like that I did that. It's like, oh wow, this is really cool. If I read Wild and Horned Hermit, and then you read this Doujin, that's neat, right? Not to diss on the story too much, but I prefer the idea that they aren't actually mother and child, but they still grew attached to each other.
That's how I understood it as well.
Like after like that transition of like kind of grim, like, oh, she got her arm cut off, she's bleeding, her own past was awful, and then she meets this grandmother, like this old lady, right? Like, oh shit, and it becomes a little communical. It's like it becomes a real light tone. Like, that's the nice shit.
Yeah.
As she grows attached, I'm pretty sure she isn't leaving. What she notices is that the old lady like snuck out. Like, oh, I'm going to follow her, and then she gets like all killed. It's a good story, especially when Kasen starts talking to her, and they both realize, like the old lady realizes it's actually Kasen. It's like, oh, you are the person I was taking care of. Just please call. And she's like, Kasen's begging, like, tell me your real name. And it realizes, no, the real name doesn't matter. I just want you to call me Mother. And that scene, like, it's not the last page. It's the big screenshot page though. And it's really nice.
Yeah.
She's hugging her. The sun's rising. It's really good. And
it's a real tearjerker scene, man. Like those kinds of family relationships are beautiful.
Yeah, it's a great time. And it just leading into basically the start of Wild and Horn Hermit is essentially, oh, this is an origin story Doujin. We get a lot of those. I don't mind them, and especially since it's always interesting to see how a certain artist interprets a character. Interprets a character. It's good. It's enjoyable, and I think it suits Pyro very well. It's like, oh, my favorite character is Kasen. Let me talk about Kasen's freaking origin.
Yeah. It's not like I planned this or anything.
One thing that it was kind of interesting is normally Kasen in like the official manga is like I said before, like the level-headed person who kind of, is calm about solving problems. And what was interesting about this story is that it portrayed her in a very like rash and emotional way, like kind of like a teenagery kind of way. Like what do you guys think of that? It's weird. It really conflicts with the typical interpretation of her character.
Well, it shows that, like, if you look at Ibiraki, like that myth, that Oni is really out of describe. They describe her as very immature. She's like always rapes and pillage and all that shenanigans, right? Or he, the actual. He.
Yeah, because it's actually a guy in the actual historical works.
Besides that, like, that character is naturally immature, right? And then suddenly we have this Kasen character who's really mature, always like chatizing the main character, Reimu. And it's like, okay, how did this happen? Well, she probably had to go through a character growth, and this like Doujin kind of shows how that started. The only thing I really wish it kind of dwelt deeper into, I know a lot of Doujin artists don't have time to do this shit, but it's to focus on like, oh, she wants to be a hermit. She has hermit arts. How did that happen? Like, there's a gap between those two. And while that doesn't make any sense, you can't end a tearjerker with explanations. Yeah, it doesn't work.
No.
But it would be nice. But I do like how it shows her growth. But I feel like on top of her like practice in the hermit arts, truly showed her as the Kasen we know today.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I guess that's kind of like the appeal of the story too, where you get to see the side of Kasen that you just normally don't see, because this is very unlike her. This is unlike the story, but it fits because she's an Oni, and as a hermit she doesn't act like one at all. So to see her act, like this, basically like a teenager, right? It's also very Oni like. It kind of fleshes out her character. It's not like she's always been nice and proper. Like something happened to her, and now she's quote unquote reformed.
It's good. It's good. So, any last comments we want to have about this, or?
I mean, I think it was generally a pretty good story. Bit of a tearjerker, really interesting origin story. Just generally pretty awesome.
There's a lot of they do a lot of backstory stuff with Kasen, and I feel like a big reason is that there's ongoing works, right? There's probably this artist is probably not going to do a conclusion to the story, like what happens after the hermit thing, because Zun's taking care of that. And I feel like whenever especially a character that's getting a lot of development through unofficial manga, they just don't want to look foolish and write a story predicting what they think is going to happen with the character, and then the character goes off in another direction, and now their work just seems pretty weird. So there's a lot of this backstory stuff, and I don't know, it's nice, especially with Kasen, since there's a pretty decent gap of what she was before.
Oh, I as we transition to Potatoes Dojin, where it kind of like where an artist takes his own route on his opinion of Gensokyo and the characters that dwell in it. Pyro's is like, okay, artists have issues with, oh, I designed this character, I think this character will act like this, and then the official work's taken another way.
So, but I think Pyro's actually does that one does, like, sticks very closely to the source material. Like, not a whole lot of creative liberty. It's more just like filling in what's open.
Yeah, that's fine, and that's good. That's good for Pyro's Dojin. But when Pyro's like talking about, oh, other Dojin artists might have like this weird issue about being like, oh, a different interpretation of character, especially if that character gets a lot of like actual content, like the characters you and I are about to discuss on our Dojins, and they go completely different routes.
Yeah,
like that's not an issue for some Dojin, for a lot of Dojin creators. Like,
I think it's more like whenever they try to predict what's going to happen, because a lot of these other ones, they're like self-contained stories where they're like, all right, this character is going to be in this situation and they're going to do, I don't know, some crazy ridiculous thing. And I see a lot of dojins like that, and it's cool. It's different interpretations on the character. So so that is very interesting about mine, that it doesn't follow that. It's like, all right, so here's the lore. How do I write a story without like overstepping this? Like, because a lot of people just like, all right, I'm going to rewrite this world and I'm going to do something different with it. It's basically your upcoming Doujin Potato, right?
So my Doujin is called Vintage. But to start talking about it, we first should say a couple words about the writer and illustrator Zanose, also known as Yakumi Sarai. So this guy's really interesting. He's done a lot of different stories, like over 20. He even came out with one recently earlier this year in March. Is it really over 50? Holy shit.
I swear, I actually going to look at this most recent one. I swear it's at that point.
It might totally be. I don't know exactly how many, but he's put out a lot of work. So, what's interesting about him is he kind of has his own interpretation of the setting. His Gensokyo is very dark. He puts a lot of focus on kind of like the concept that this magical wonderland that is Gensokyo, it's really neat and all, but you can't have, miracles and magic without dark secrets that kind of like fuel it all. So under every like miraculous power, there's, brutal rituals and like strange customs that, make it all possible. So things like cannibalism, yokai eating humans, human sacrifices, like all sorts of really crazy shit. But what's even more interesting is he doesn't just portray this stuff in the settings, but a lot of the time he just portrays it in a very like matter of fact, like, hey, this is just part of life way. So it really shows that like, hey, all these like crazy like yokai and long-lived nigh immortal characters in this setting, this is just another day for them. For them, eating a person is just another dinner. The same way, we don't treat a typical meal as anything special in real life. And he does a really, really good job of conveying all this.
So, tell me about the artist. I was wrong about the 50-ish. It was actually only known as the 33rd book.
Okay, that's still quite a bit, though.
Yeah.
I would not be able to name another artist who's done that much work. Especially the length of the works he puts out. They're all like full stories. Like he does do some kind of more gag related stuff, but
he's only done like 3 gag ones.
Yeah, and even the gag ones are still pretty lengthy. And it's crazy because it's not like his stuff isn't just lengthy in terms of page count. The actual art is super beautiful, very, very detailed.
I'm gonna be honest. I bought like Learn How to Draw, whole character book, and he's like one of the main artists on that, teaching you how to draw like normal forms of characters. Like, oh, this is great.
That's awesome.
Oh, he has a How to Draw series. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So other things about the artist, like okay, this is probably his most controversial work, ironically, simply because in most of his other works, there's like this sense of continuity, like oh, this happens and then this happens, like oh, this is just happening later down the line, like, especially with his most recent two. But the issue now is this book kind of contradicts everything. Like something pretty big happens in it, and it's not mentioned anymore. After that, it's like not drawn, it's not written. Like, but you can make the argument this is one of his earlier works, and he didn't feel like the need to start making a good continuity because each work, as it was self-contained.
Yeah,
something to mention.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point because he does have a lot of like all the works he puts out are all based in the same exact kind of like dark and Sokyo setting. So you're right. There is kind of a sense of continuity between everything, between all of them.
So yeah.
Sorry. So let's get into it. So Vintage. So to give a short summary, this is a story about Remilia asking Sakuya to give up her leg. I mean, like literally give up her leg to her. Remilia tells Sakuya to remove her leg because she wants to eat it. Now, it's not really that simple. Ultimately, the story is actually about Remilia kind of like acknowledging Sakuya's right to be mortal. Because, of course, Remilia wants Sakuya to serve her forever. Sakuya prefers, staying human and staying mortal. And this is kind of like Remilia's form of acknowledging, and respecting her decision. Which is really cool. It's an interesting way to kind of like look at their relationship. So the way the story starts off is we kind of have an opening where Patchouli,
stormy night,
pretty much. Patchouli's bargaining with Alice to create a prosthetic leg for Sakuya. So going right in, we see, hey, why does Sakuya need a prosthetic leg? What's going on? And so we kind of go. It's not exactly a flashback, but it's like a storytelling style where, this information is thrown in our face, and then we kind of go to a scene of the residents of the Scarlet Devil Mansion making wine, and like a conversation between Kane and Akio in the village, and they're talking about like, oh, hey, the Scarlet Devil Mansion, like so they're just in the village buying wine. This is just like a normal daily thing. We're just accompanying them in their lives, and they talk about like the different kinds of wine the SDM puts out, and so as you know, when you're making wine, you have to crush the grapes. This is something you do with your legs. So this is kind of like a neat way to just kind of like follow some characters on like a normal, regular, everyday thing that kind of like builds on the setting and makes the setting feel really lived in. Because of course, you have all these characters, Sakuya's a mage, he does mage stuff in the SDM, you got Mei Ling, she guards the gate, Remilia, she's the mistress. These are just kind of like descriptions of them. When you imagine them, like, what do you imagine them doing on like a typical day? You don't really know. So it's nice that he kind of gives them this hobby of, making and selling wine, because these are like immortal yokai. They live for so many years, and it's nice to kind of like have an idea of like, oh, hey, here's something they might do in their spare time to kind of like pass the time and, do something interesting. So it's a good way to kind of like spice up the setting and make it feel more lived in.
I love like expanding upon settings, like, oh, make this world seem realistic.
Yeah.
And that's always great, especially since like one of the first scenes after the Dark and Stormy Night discussions, it shows my favorite girl. Oh yeah,
Flandre over there crushing some grapes, making some wine.
And a little issue I have with her little description. The hidden younger sister Flandre makes one as well. While technically a wine, it has an immature taste. It is popular among a certain class of customers.
I know that's a very interesting way to put it. Yeah.
Whatever.
Oh man.
Despite that, a good thing of this, like even though we transition from this like really like grim setting, even in the very start, it shows Shanghai like being really cute.
Oh, no, yeah, that's what's super interesting about Zenose is like all his stories are super dark, but like the art, the art isn't always like non-threatening, but the way he portrays everything is very like, hey, this is just an everyday thing. So all this crazy shit is going down, but everyone's just like, oh, this is super normal. This is, they're all just kind of going through everything. So, Sakuya is missing her fucking leg, and yet throughout this story, everyone's still cracking jokes and kind of messing around.
So before we say this is just purely gag and there's
no it's definitely not a gag. It's just that it's treated, it's lighthearted. Like, the way the characters treat things a lot of the time feels lighthearted.
Well, that's for a good chunk of it, right?
Uh-huh.
But there's always that certain moment, especially later in this story, where things kind of ramp up a bit and there's a sense of consequence.
Oh, yeah.
Other stories show what if this happened against Tokyo, and everyone's reaction to it, right?
Yeah.
So for Vintage, like I said, is one of his more controversial works for a lot of reasons. This one is because, not only because of lack of coherency, the other ones feel like there's more consequences to it. This one's just oh, this is Sakuya losing a leg, right?
So I think that's because this is less about exploring the actual setting and more about exploring the character relationship between Sakuya and Romelia. There's other works that dive more into the particulars of the human village and how that works, and the relationships between all the different people on Yokai Mountain and how that works. And those tend to be, less the way the characters act is a lot more serious because it's a lot more political. But yeah, in this case, since it's character relationships, we kind of see that yes, there's a lot of crazy shit going down, but the way the characters in the SDM interact with each other is still lighthearted and fun, and it shows that they have this kind of relationship.
So one huge thing we should note as this scene eclipsed with Moku reminiscing about their fight in Perishable Night, the 8th game of the series. A lot of people say it's good. I think it's kind of meh. It's a little too easy for me. So it's often said that Sakuya wants to remain human, and okay, so this is as Potato mentioned at the start. Oh, this is all a reminder that Sakuya is still human. While some works do mess with this work very focuses on it. Why, oh, she had this opportunity to become a yokai, become a vampire, even become immortal to stay with Romelia. But her desire is still, I want to stay human, but I will serve you till my dying breath. So.
It's almost like an ultimatum that Romelia gives her. It's hey, accept immortality or give me your leg. You can obviously those words weren't used, but you can almost think about it that way. So we start off with that scene where they're just making wine, and that's kind of the opening. And from there we go into the whole flashback to Imperishable Night. Romelia and Sakuya are oh, you could be immortal, and I just want to be human. And we just kind of continue on with the whole Alice making the prosthetic, and we're learning kind of how exactly Sakuya lost her leg. So the whole request from Romelia, how the leg itself gets removed by Mei Ling, and it's actually really interesting. So they actually do a whole surgical procedure with Mei Ling in a doctor's garb and everything, and and it's still lighthearted even at this point. They're essentially in an operating theater, and Sakuya is under anesthesia getting operated on, and her and Mei Ling are still fucking cracking jokes. Mei Ling's oh, maybe I'll have a taste of your leg while I get it off. And, we're looking at this super bloody, gruesome scene of essentially a medical procedure happening. If you removed all the dialogue, you would think everything that's going on is super dark, super spooky. But they're just kind of chatting it up, the whole time. It's, and later on, you even get to see Mei Ling, prepare Sakuya's leg in the kitchen. And it's heavy, man. That'll fuck with a lot of people. The idea of Buffalo Bill style, someone preparing human meat in the kitchen. It's unnerving, and there's a lot of disturbing imagery in the story.
Yeah, no, that's definitely one thing that you go on and as you're reading, right? Because there's it's drawn kind of cute, and
it's a unique art style.
But then when the yokai, whenever they show their darker side, and it's weird because it's still it's instant. It's
so a good page of this is after the operation, and Alice is talking to Romelia, page 26 in particular, you can see Remila's face shift from like this cute vampire into like an actual demonic one. Like instead of just showing two things like protruding out like a cute vampire, it's like full row.
Oh, but that's actually a common thing in all of Zenosi's works. He gives all of the yokai carnivorous teeth. Even when they're like smiling and doing like a funny face, they still have those sharp looking teeth. So you always have that reminder of like, hey, this is a carnivore. They are meant to hunt and kill people. And like, yes, on page 26, you have that like very demonic, evil-looking face that looks like it's about to kill someone. So even on some of the other pages, like the page before that, or the page after that, 27, Remilia does a funny little face, but she's still got those, those fucking shark teeth, those dangerous-looking teeth. So it's this constant reminder that like, oh shit, these characters are fucking dangerous. Like, yeah, they're like us in which they have their moments of fun, but like when it comes down to it, by nature, they're still fucking yokai that eat people.
They're still yokai.
Artists kind of don't really do. This is why this artist in particular is very like unique. Yeah. He shows that they're all yokai. They all eat people. Like, oh, instead though a bit that could be an argument.
Yeah, it's
interpretation. It is true to what they are. Because
I think I agree with it more as an interpretation than I do with the interpretation that everything in Gensokyo is fun and cutesy. It's like, yes, that's a wonderful fantasy, but at the same time, if we're gonna come at it from like a real functioning world kind of standpoint, there's no such thing as pure positivity anywhere. There's always a good side and a dark side to everything. So, Gensokyo is this wonderland, but it's not really a wonderland for humans. It's a wonderland for these, powerful immortal beings that inhabit it. For humans are just cattle there.
Two things. One, everyone knows Gensokyo is simply translation to like land of fantasy, something like that. Second thing is more lore-wise, just lore, General Zune lore, the main official lore, is that Gensokyo is created as yokai started to die out. At the essence, yokai needs humans' belief, their fear to exist. If they don't have that, they no longer do. Same applies to gods in the same universe. Big Bad, let's call her. Yeah. We'll talk about her eventually. Everyone knows Yukari. But she creates this world for yokai to be like, oh, you can still exist here. We'll have humans for you to eat and still feel their fear to exist. Because being carnivorous isn't just what yokai do. They aren't just, I must eat humans to fuel themselves to continue. They are a mystical being that relies on their fear to be what they are. That's what separates them from just being creatures or like monsters, but rather not figments of humans' imagination, but embodiments of their greatest fears. And I feel like that's what I feel like Gensokyo is. And while I enjoy a lot of the characters, Grimdark Gensokyo is not exactly my cup of tea, but I enjoy the artists who do such things.
But like, because when you look at the story at the very beginning, it was kind of like this because you're dealing with vampires. They mention like Sakuya actually like preparing humans in the kitchen, like that's all official, right? But Zune moved away from that, and he did more of this like spiritual approach where yokai are more spiritual beings and they rely on other things to actually sustain themselves, like Kogasa needing to like scare people. That's like technically her substance, right? Yeah, where she does very poorly. It's funny, but like this is kind of, I guess, a throwback to that. They're yokai. They're scary beings that, like, in historical context, kill people. Like, Western vampires, kill people and suck their blood, and in general, most Japanese yokai, do consume humans. Not as a main subsistence source, but like, they still kill people. And this is a very interesting world where, like you said, they're basically monsters, and there's like certain things that they have to do in order for their world to work. They have to prepare humans, and Remilia has a certain relationship with Sakuya. Give me your leg.
Yeah, so ultimately the story's kind of, sad. It's about Sakuya essentially like giving up a literal part of herself for the sake of like maintaining her humanity. But I almost want to call it inspiring, but it's not. It's fucking terrible. Ramelia is kind of a terrible person, but at the same time, it's like you could argue that there was a better way for her to like acknowledge Sakuya's humanity, but this makes sense.
So something that's mentioned later
Yep.
is that the whole reason she's even cutting the leg is not only to remind that she's human, but to still keep her memory after she dies. There's still fundamentally like yokai that want to eat.
Yeah.
So even Sakuya knows this. So a very important factor is the fact that she will be remembered not just by being eaten, but as someone important to the manor itself. So she is the only human in that place.
Yeah, no. But speaking about, humans and their perspective, funny enough, like this outside perspective comes actually from Alice, because Alice has this like outsider view to this, and she has like the general audience reaction of, why are you taking her leg? What do you mean? It's tagged in Dynasty Reader as creepy, and I think I would agree.
Most of Zanose stuff is, and exactly because of his weird, like, grim dark setting.
Oh no, but like there's just a ton of flavor in all of these different doujins, and especially like the ending. Like the ending is.
Yeah, it's very jokey. Saku's like, "Oh, maybe I'll have a bite of my leg too." And it's almost like a sitcom-ish comedy ending.
So basically, how the story progresses from there is after Sakuya gets her leg, Alice confronts her. It's like, you're not as strong as you used to be. Why did you do this? And like Alice is still kind of disapproving, right?
Yeah.
But as we learn why, like Ramelia did this, to, like honor Sakuya as a human and remember her like years after she dies, like as Mei Ling prepares her leg, that like shows like, there's like it shows what we've been discussing the entire time.
Yeah.
And that's pretty important. Like there's a sense of like darkness and everything, like realism. But at the end of the day, it's just a master wanting to remember her servant.
Yeah.
And that's nice in its own way. Now, Zanosu and his freaking jokes, he always ends, no matter how dark something is, he always ends it with a joke.
That's true.
So I feel like saying it into a joke like that is like not too special. It's just kind of like expected from this guy.
Well, I mean, that's a lot of like Touhou in general is like this, because like Zune, whenever he has a story out, like people are joking around. Like the latest demo of 17, they're literally going to hell.
Well, they went to hell like 2 other times, so at this point, it's not an issue. Like, if you want to count technically 9, okay. Before we start getting more other lores, there's technically 4. There's 3 hells, right? There's the hell that the Grand Judge rules over, determining who goes there and all that. There is the old hell is now currently the underground, and then there's the Hetat. I can't ever pronounce the name. It's Greek, whatever. Yeah, and it's the same hell.
Hecatia's hell, yeah.
Hecatia?
There's multiple hell interpretations, and all the main protagonists has gone through it once or twice. Hell, the Netherworld's a thing that isn't hell, but it's the afterlife, and they gone through that too. Like, to be honest, how the series is structured, it's like, well, they go through all this bullshit,
but like
this one's just another walk through the park. So, like, going back to like before I get off track and ramble, so going back to your comment about like Zoom, like the kids are just being smug about like no matter what the stupid situation they're in, right? Oh no, they're attacking the moon. What should we do? Let's just be super smug.
Yeah, that's basically their default. Any playable character is like default emotion is smug.
Like even the characters we don't think are that smug become smug the moment they become playable. Looking at you, Yomu.
Oh yeah, Yomu. That's true. I think that's just a factor of like the way Zune writes dialogue for main characters. Like he always tries to do some kind of like witty thing, but it ends up just being like haha, I'm a smug motherfucker.
But that bleeds into like other works too. So like for example in this one, like they're not necessarily smug, but there's that like playfulness that it's almost present in
Mhm.
everything. Almost. Mine's wasn't. But no.
Even yours has
Yeah.
that little playfulness when Cassie's talking to the old lady.
That's right.
Little they're little fighting. It's like, stop telling me what to do. Give me 5 more minutes to sleep.
Yeah.
No, get up, you lazy bum.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, right?
Oh no.
So-
Yeah. So it is kind of like ever present. I mean, there's really serious stories and as far as these doujins are concerned, but a lot of it's just
This is one of
playful.
them. Yeah, it still has this like unique taste of like, it's
Yeah.
dark, but all the characters are still joking around. It still feels like this is Zune, like Zune dialogue. Oh, they're all like smug, they're all shit talking each other. But at the end of the day, his goes a little darker, underlined darker. Yeah. Well, we talk about his comedy. Do you think any last comments on this doujin on Vintage?
No, I recommend it, and I recommend all the rest of Zenose's stuff. If anyone wants to take a look, it's all excellent stuff. It's super interesting, very unique.
There's a lot to go.
Check it out.
And if you really like Touhou and like someone's little darker interpretation, he's good. That's my opinion.
Oh yeah, definitely. If you really enjoy that.
Yeah.
Anything else, Pyro? Any last comment?
No, just same recommendation. Same recommendation.
So,
if you enjoy
as we go from grimdark Gensokyo, we transition to a different one. A very light-hearted, perverted Gensokyo. Ahem. My Doujin. The story of Miss Sakuya's urine being used to slice noodles. Quite a title.
That is one hell of a title.
So, before we get into anything, we must talk about Hitori and the wonder that he is. He goes absurd. So Zune occasionally releases official books that expand the lore of Touhou. This artist is the one to appear in it very, very often. For good reason. His shit is funny. His art is good too. Everything just happens to work out. If you want to know one of his more famous images, just look up the Donald Trump in Gensokyo. It's a good one. So, as we actually delve into this doujin, he has a little warning. On the first page after you open it. This doujin is a gag manga. Expect excessive eroticism, and you will be disappointed. People who want to slice noodles with pee in real life, close the book and go seek a good hospital.
Oh.
Anyway. So, he always starts his
Wonderful
doujin kind of like serious and all that. So, it opens up, it's summertime, Misaku's just putting up laundry. His art is all super cute, right? And, it all starts out pretty nice. Chirno stops by, it's like, oh, this place is hot. I would like some things. AC, German ice cream sandwiches, the works. So, something to note, so he has basically two character art styles. Chibi deformed characters, and his actual design ones, like Sakuya. Who he decides to make chibi is actually kind of funny. One of the characters in particular is Flandre, and this artist does Flandre very adorably. And then the very next moment, we see Remelia burst in, break the fourth wall, right off the bat. I need you guys to help me with this, because this it's a gag file. You can't just explain story. There isn't any.
I don't know what to say. It is funny. It's literally just... so it's, everyone's fucking chasing... So essentially, the summer heat gets to Amelia, and she wants to fucking, fucking slew us noodles with Sakuya's piss, and so she chases her around to try to get her to do this, and that's kind of essentially what happens. I'm not sure what else there is to say. It's,
Mei comes in, bursts in, she's going to be saving Sakuya if you don't know anything about this artist or story. And the very next moment, the very next page, ahem. So that's why I'm using this Sakuya's urine to make soup dumplings. When you rip those hot dumpling skins, this Sakuya's juices will spill out. What? This manga this doujin just makes you go, what?
Yeah,
you're expecting something and they just throw you for a loop and you're like, excuse you, what did I just, what?
And so something to keep in mind. Remelia and Mei Ling have super perverted stalker tendencies when it comes to Sakuya. For various reasons. Even though it mentions that the summer heat's getting to Remelia's head, it's just amplifying her stupidity. The stupidity was always there. And then they embrace each other. And then Chirno makes a comment. It's like, oh, no, Chirno's even saying this. Please stop being stupid, right? Because Chirno's only being stupid. And then the immediate thing, the next page is the morning after page, Mei-Ling smoking a cigarette. And then the best panel, the best line in this entire thing comes up. Relax, I thought of Sakya when it went in, so it didn't count.
Oh my god.
The next line. Keeping the heim of the heart safe is what makes a virgin. It's so stupid.
Yeah, it's pretty silly.
Pashley describes what's happening. Summer is being stupid and destroying Ramelia. And then we get to see what... Oh no! Ramelia's like this. What's happening to Flandre? The next thing you see her do is make a jello bath. And it's so cute. She's making it in Chirno. And it's freaking adorable. As the farce continues, the shenanigans, Pashley sends Sakya away for her protection. So we get to see... This doujin is a great example of how another artist interprets many of the characters. And he just dumps the entire cast of SA and UFO on us immediately, showing how, like, just on the single, like, 1-2 pages, how he sees all these characters. It's wonderful how you're able to see, like, oh, this is what this guy thinks of this character, like, his interpretation in a single instant. And it's really nice. Like, his art style is, like, really distinct to that point where you can tell, oh, this is what this character does. Let's see. As we continue this wonderful farce, Ramelia's power of manipulating fate forces Sakya on the word, the fate that cannot be resisted. This is what people call it, destiny. The urge to pee. I'm like, what? No. You're making these serious words.
She uses her destiny powers to force her to pee.
This continues, and we get to see something even stupider, like what does people's fate look like? And it's really fucking stupid. It makes so many jokes at once.
Some Doraemon-looking fucking character. So
Doraemon, Mickey Mouse tear, and Asakya's crying her tears. Stop this madman. So we have to discuss the entire cast and how they all look, right? So let's hit with SA first. We look at the stage 1 and 2 bosses. They look fairly normal. Yugi is Yugi. But then Koishi's deformed, soulless eyes. And then we look at the 2 freaking animal characters. As I mentioned earlier, like Chirno and Flandre are like little chibi versions of themselves. So are Orin and Oku. And it's so cute. It's adorable. Like, this guy's interpretation of those characters is like, they're really cute and they represent innocence. Now, when you look at UFO side, that's when things start taking a weird turn. It's like, oh, so we have Nazrin, who looks like Mickey Mouse, and everyone else is like looking normal until you see Sho and Uzan, and they're chibi too. It's like, what? Sho is chibi? What? And then Uzan's like this really like cute cloud. Like, what's even happening?
Uzan, yeah.
Like, all these like little quick interpretations, quick flashes of imagery, like show you like, oh, this is what this guy thinks of this character. And it's wonderful. Like, I love artists that do that, especially when at the end of the day they just do something really, really fucking stupid. Looking at everyone's fate, we see Sakya's look like some stupid monster child. I already mentioned Nazrin looks like Mickey Mouse. Shoals is just a cat. I want to say it's based off some kind of meme, but I don't know Japanese memes that well. And it just continues from there. Like, everyone's fate looks really freaking stupid. Like, you look at what's the stage 1 of SA's name again? Starts with a Y. Yeah, Yamana's spirit is Spider-Man.
Of course. I mean,
stupid stuff like that. And then, okay, so all these gags are like coming to a close. It's like, what's all this stupid stuff? And then she thinks of the logical question. Wait, Ramelia, what are you doing in the sun? And then she burns. Sakya runs away, trying to save herself. And then, who is it? Then Byakurin, also one of my top 7 favorite characters, decides we need to save this pervert. And everyone says, do we have to? It says yes. So Sakya's like trying to figure out what to do. I need to figure out how to do something. And in this quick glimpse, we see how this artist draws Marissa, also super good. Like, you see all these flashes of imagery and characters, like, oh, this is great.
Like, there's a lot going on in this. Like, you'll read this, you'll start flipping through the pages, and you're just like, one page looks very different from the other. There's just, like, new characters showing up.
Constant imagery, constant motion.
Yeah.
Constant information. I learned about the bladder. When the bladder reaches the limit of its capacity, about half a liter, the human body undergoes a spinal reflex called micturational reflex. Because of this, there's no way to control the loosening of the internal utherinal splinter. But further downstream, the existence of the external utherinal splinter gives my body a chance to suppress the urge to urinate. Like, why am I learning this much information about peeing? It's stupid. Like, it's just constant flashes. This is what a gag manga is. It's information, and it's overflowing you with something that's funny.
A trip from start to finish. It's amazing.
So we hit the next page. Patchley's like, okay, I have advice. Because even a simple maid has half a soul. That's my model. She gives a really like long, troublesome description. It's like, okay, just do this. Okay, Sakya's listening. It's like, okay, there's a merciful Buddha in hell in the Scarlet Devil Mansion. There's Lady Patchley. Like, she's already like associating Patchley with the god in the horrible Devil's Mansion. She learns, oh, I implanted something into your brain. Like, what? No. Everyone's awful in that mansion. Sakya's the only sane one. There's a huge contrast between like this work and the last one. Like, I love rambling about stuff like this. The last work was like it's still gaggy, right?
Yeah.
But it's like this serious manner. Everyone's like acting in character. This one, everyone's so out of character, but the situation and they're placed in makes everyone good. ReUKing comes back to life after getting saved, and she freaking bullied Sho the entire time. All these chibi characters are the embodiment of innocence. ReUKing finally meets with Sakya. I don't know why I'm describing the story of a gag manga. This doesn't work, but it does. Sakya like decides to answer with like one of her spell cards. Okay, let me use Killer Doll and like just throw a bunch of knives at you. And then the best part is like cheat sign, super ultra barrier. Like, the downside is ReUKing is known for her eccentric spell card names. Like Red the Nightless Castle. This one suits her. It's so stupid. And then, okay, so while ReUKing thinks she's cornered Sakya, Sakya decides, I'm not going to stop time. I'm going to move it forward.
Change the season because the summer's the thing that's getting to her head, yeah.
And that is to end the summer. The knives I cast out have all bounced back. They rebounded. And this breaks fate. She wakes up Autumn. She wakes up the two Aki sisters. And one of them with a knife in the head. Like, wake up, Autumn's happening, ReUKing's kind of back to normal, and one of the Aki sisters are dead. Riko is dead. Okay, so it looks like a decent ending. Like, oh, it ends on a funny gag, the Autumn is dead, and then, from out of nowhere, Yuka shows up. Yuka, with her overwhelming sadistic presence, as she holds a knife, threatening Sakya. The entire fate of her trying to avoid to urinate happens. All the characters cry.
Oh, man.
Or sorry. And it ends. Happy ending.
Fucking meme.
Happy leaking. This is not happy.
All that happens and
it's
she
just
ends
some
up
silly
peeing.
shit, yeah.
Anyway, like all Hitori's works are a journey to behold. Like, all these flashes of imagery, all these characters. In that doujin alone, there was the entire cast of SA, UFO, and EOSD, with a little hint of freaking Mountain of Faith. It just throws so many characters at you, but they all work well. They all establish their character almost in an instant. And that's what gag mangas do. Like, Pyros is building Kasen. Potatoes is like developing the Scarlet Manor as a whole through a long, elaborate story. This is why Touhou works. There's so many ways to interpret these characters, and I love it. I rambled for a long time.
It's excellent, yeah.
God, my roommate's not up right now. I just love this doujin. It's a good introduction to Hitori's wonderful world. I want to recommend more, but everyone should start here. It's like just get a quick glimpse of what he's all about, and then you explore all his other gags. Certain gags obviously don't hit as hard as others. Humor is subjective.
But do you think this is one of his best works?
Uh-huh.
This is a great introduction work. I think there are better ones, but I feel like for this podcast, like the first one we're doing, people need to read this first so they understand Hitori's basic humor.
Uh-huh.
And if they like his basic humor, they'll delve into other things. If you don't like this, You're not going to like the absurdity of his other work.
That makes sense.
Koishi being a kidney stone, wonderful. Like works like that. Like there's all these little other things, right? Other works that occur.
Yeah.
You have to understand the humor, and I feel like this doujin in particular captures Hitori's humor, and I love it. Like this is why it's up there. Like he has better ones that I've laughed more at, but this is a great start for anyone who wants to get into like doujins in general and see the absurdity of like how one can vastly interpret a character while still somehow keeping true to it.
Like comedy stuff is always fun, but it's pretty much just said like it's straightforward. You just kind of like enjoy it for what it is.
You can't really go too deep. You could go deep into each panel, but like overall, the story's just like a convoluted mess on purpose. Like, and it works great.
This one is, I don't want to say it's my kind of humor, but I like it. Maybe it's because I'm a little childish.
This is why we're doing the podcast. I mean, there's just so much of these doujins just lying around.
So much to delve into.
I'm sure that if we really, really wanted to, this podcast could go on forever. There's no way we'd be able to review every doujin. There's no way.
There's really more doujins coming out than we can review. Even if we did this daily, we would not ever finish. I feel like that's a good thing. Like we always have a nice influx of artists, people who want to continue making these work. And let's say every artist suddenly quit making Touhou stuff, right?
Yeah.
Touhou dies.
Yep.
We would still have years and years of content to talk about of everything they made. The fans make this series.
Yep.
And that's a good thing. It's wonderful. It's how this series progresses. Like a lot of stuff that fans come up with sometimes gets adopted into canon. A good example is the fair. There's 2 official mangas going on right now. Pyro talked about them, Wild and Horned Hermit. The other one is Visionary Fairies in the Shrine.
In Shrine, yeah.
And that artist makes so many doujins.
Fairies in
and
Shrine,
all of his stuff eventually becomes canon. It's wonderful. There's too much good art, good doujins, good music. I love this series. And that's just the fan stuff. The main games themselves are amazing too. I recommend like at least hitting one of the games so you get like a basic understanding of how the series works. It's okay to play on easy. It is. I swear. Yeah, it's okay. I'm going to judge you.
I like that you have to clarify
I'm
that.
not that great either. I'm a normal 1cc with extras every bit. I'm average. It's okay to play on easy.
It's okay. It's okay to play on easy. Just don't mention it.
Just do it. Because I want people to get it. I hope this podcast, like if you're a long-time fan or just first time tuning in, you appreciate these doujins. Fans make this. And if you're becoming a fan,
a lot of work goes into them, and you can really see it in the work itself.
It works the other way around too. Like if you're like into the games and like maybe something else like the music, but you've never read doujin seriously or like sat down to read a couple of these, they're really good reads. And even if the story isn't really there, the art is also great. Like these artists draw some great stuff, either if it's like realistic or cute, creepy, like it's just in between. And the art that comes out of this is absolutely fantastic, especially when you couple it with Doujinshi. I think that's all the time that we have now for this first podcast. Anybody that's listening, we would like to hear your feedback.
General improvements. Maybe I'm a little too loud.
Yeah, anything from more stuff to review to different segments, or just anything at all would be super appreciated.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have revolving guests. You won't hear the same voices over. We're gonna be reviewing different kinds of doujins. We might even have theme sections. All this stuff is down the line. Once again, I would like to thank everybody for listening. This was a blast recording this, and I hope you have at least as much fun as we did. Definitely. And be sure to tune in. I'm sure there's going to be more of us. There's going to be more of this as well.
Well, thanks again to anyone who might actually be listening to this. Seriously, we definitely appreciate it.
So, I hope you guys enjoy it.
Enjoy doujins.
That's the most important part, yep. Enjoy the property. not even just Touhou, but like there's a lot of Touhou ones. So if you gotta read one, like Touhou's a pretty good way to go.
All right,
Yep.
guys, signing off. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
All right, have a good one, everybody.